Hello and welcome to Drawfest everyone. A very warm welcome also to my program. I am your host, Heikala. I'm a traditional artist from Finland. I hope you all have had a fun time enjoying the programs Drawfest has had to offer, and I hope you tune into programs taking place later this weekend. Today I'll be making a painting traditionally with colored inks, and will be talking in depth about how I use colors in my artworks. I will also be answering questions that I received from my followers on Instagram. I hope all of you will enjoy this program. I very much encourage you to also join me by drawing or painting to create a magical moment together. If you do end up drawing or painting something inspired by this program during the event or after, I do recommend sharing it online with the event hashtag Drawfest. This is a pre-recorded video of my process with this piece. I wanted to show you my entire painting process from start to finish, but to be honest, with live painting with actual paints, most of the time would be wasted on waiting for the paint to dry. So to streamline my program, I wanted to do a pre-recorded video of my painting process. For this piece, I wanted to create a setting where a wildfire has just recently scorched a forest. There will be two characters in the foreground, a forest spirit and her companion. I want the mood of the painting to be gloomy, but also serene and hopeful at the same time. I usually make the line art for my artworks with either a black waterproof brush pen or with a pencil. I decided to go with the pencil outlines this time because I didn't want the lines to be too prominent. For the initial sketch that I made onto this watercolor paper, I used a warm gray colored pencil. The paper I'm using is cold-pressed watercolor paper. As I mentioned before, I will be coloring this piece with colored inks. I mostly use colored inks to create my artworks, but I also sometimes use other mediums like watercolors and poster colors in my paintings. I might use poster color at the end to add some highlights or to do some corrections. Next, I'll be answering some questions that I received about my coloring process. Not really. I find many color combinations very pretty, and since my approach to color schemes is mostly based on the individual painting I am making and the mood of that specific painting, I find that I use a variety of different color combinations in my works. Yes, I have been meaning to make paintings where I explore tones of intense red as the main color. But since my paintings are usually nature-themed, red as a color is rarely seen in my paintings. When using red, I usually have it as a really light tone like pale pink or peach. But using a really vivid magenta or carmine as the main color in my painting would be a challenge. Yes, because I use colored inks, which can't be reactivated once they are dry, I always mix as much ink as I'll need for just one painting. When I have my line art ready for a painting, I take a picture of the line art with my phone and send it to my iPad. There I then try the colors on top of the sketch digitally and see what kind of a color scheme would work best for the painting that I am making. You can see some of my color thumbnailing speed paints up in the upper corner. When I have the color thumbnail ready, I send it to my phone and use it as a reference. For this piece I am currently making, I did have a color thumbnail as a reference, but during the painting process, I decided to make the background a lot different than I had planned out, because I thought that what I was painting looked better than the plan that I originally had. That is why the background is lighter and the contrast with the foreground and the background is better in the final piece. I usually wait until the previous layer is completely dry. Depending on the air humidity and the amount of water I used, it might take from 2 to 10 minutes to dry completely. I sometimes use a hairdryer to speed up the drying process, but I find that it sometimes shifts the paint in ways I don't like it to, so I have learned to patiently wait. It really depends on how confident I feel at the time and on the medium I am using. If there is a really big area which needs a layer of one color, I usually do that first, and if there are details I need to mask in a painting before I start to paint, I do that first. If I am feeling confident, I will start from the characters. If not, I will leave the characters for last. In this painting I am making right now, I was really nervous to make the deer and the character, so I tried to postpone that as long as I could. With colored inks, I usually don't have to work in any particular order, because once colored ink is dry on the paper, it is waterproof and will not lift even when water is put on top of it. That way I can work in any order I like. When working with watercolors, I tend to move from light to dark and also try to do warm colors before cold tones. The one thing I do keep in mind with colored inks is that since I am right-handed, I try to work from left to right to avoid my hand smudging the paint underneath it. These days I work on one painting from 2 to 3 days. There is a lot of wait time because I want a layer of paint to be completely dry before I paint next to it or on top of it. In my process, I think there is a dialogue happening with me and the painting. When the paint is drying, I stare at the painting and think about my next move. My paintings are from A4 to A3 sized. I rarely make anything bigger, but would love to try painting on a larger scale sometime. I use synthetic watercolor brushes which retain moisture very well. I also have a lot of the color mix that I will need for an area, so I don't run out halfway through an area and can quickly dip the brush into more paint if needed. Before I start painting, I plan out where there will be a light source in the painting. This way I know which areas will be left with the lightest tone of paint, or just blank altogether, since the white of the paper will be the lightest areas in an ink or watercolor painting. When creating beams of light, I usually use wet on wet technique to get a nice gradient from dark to light. If there is harsh sunlight in the painting, the edges of light and shadows in objects have defined shapes, and I paint the shadows with darker tone to get more contrast in the light and dark. With colored inks, mistakes will happen, and they are difficult to fix since colored inks are a waterproof medium. With watercolor, you can more easily lift the paint from the paper with water if the paint is already dry. But with colored inks, you have to realize your mistake when the paint is still very wet. When a mistake happens, I quickly lift the ink from the paper with a tissue. There will be some color left in the paper because watercolor papers are usually very absorbent. But then I usually paint over with the color that I was supposed to use. For splatters in the background or in other unimportant areas, I usually let them be or hide them with darker color if possible. If I make a mistake on an important area, I might fix it with poster color or gouache at the end. But usually I don't really mind leaving tiny mistakes in the work. Most likely they are only mistakes that I will notice, not the viewer. Painting large areas evenly is all about working as quickly as possible. If you can have a layer of just water in the area first, that will also help the paint to not dry as quickly. But you might end up with a variety in the value of the coverage. For large areas, you need to have a big enough brush so you can work the area quickly. If you can mask some areas beforehand so you don't have to worry about getting paint on them, that will help too. Try to start from one corner and work your way from there to the other corner of the area. Starting from the middle will be difficult, since there will be more edges where the paint might start to dry. In addition, having enough of the color ready is essential. Running out of the color midway through will end up in paint drying if you need to start mixing more. For colors, I often search for inspiration in either photography or other artists' artworks. For this piece, I searched the internet for local newspaper pictures of forest fires, especially the moments where the fire had already been extinguished and the pictures of the sad aftermaths. It really helped me to see how smoke changes the colors of the objects behind it, and helped me to choose the color scheme I wanted to have in this piece. In addition, while I was painting this piece, I remembered an artwork by a Finnish fine artist Eero Järnefelt. The setting in the painting is similar to what I was going for, so I studied it and the colors used in it to apply some aspects of it to my painting. At times, a painting will definitely benefit from having a limited color palette of just 3 colors, for example. Especially in the piece I am making right now, the overall murky and toned down colors will help to lift up the more saturated colors that I'll be using later on. A good experiment for beginners in watercolor and colored inks is to take every tone that you have of just one color, for example blue, and try to mix as many different tones that you can with those limited colors. I think it is a good exercise to see how much variety in hue and value they can achieve with just 1 or 2 colors. When you don't want areas of paint to blend together, best thing you can do is to wait patiently. If you are satisfied with an area you painted and want to move on to painting an area beside it, you need to wait for the area to be completely dry so the paint will not bleed into the area next to it. The best way to know that an area is completely dry is to touch the area with the back of your hand to see if it is cold. If the paint looks dry, but when touched, the area feels cold, then it is still wet. I recommend you to avoid touching the watercolor paper with your fingers, since they have oils in them, which might affect the paper and how your paint will look on the paper. Yes, absolutely. Whenever I see a photo or a painting with nice colors, I save it to a personal Pinterest board so that when I need inspiration for colors, I can easily find inspiration in one place. This also goes for the mood of the painting. I recommend searching for inspiration from TV series or movies, where it is quite common to set a mood for a scene with a certain color palette. I think backgrounds are something that many artists struggle with. I used to draw and paint character-focused artworks almost exclusively before. I either had my character on a completely white background or made a very simple background for my characters as an afterthought. But now, when I'm sketching and thumbnailing ideas for paintings, I usually think of an environment first and then place a character in it. Or sometimes make a character and try to think of how I could create a setting for that character. Unlike before, the background or the mood of the painting has a bigger importance to me in the final piece rather than the character. Still, when creating paintings with elaborate backgrounds, I try to somehow make the character pop from the painting. When I try to show depth in my paintings, the best methods that I use to show that something is closer is to make the line art for those objects thicker, make the outlines clear and defined, choosing more saturated and vibrant colors, and using warmer and darker colors for the objects that are closest to the viewer. Then again, when I want it to seem that objects are farther away, I make the outlines very thin or don't use line art at all. Have the edges of the objects be blurry, choose colors that are toned down and more grayish in their hue, as well as choosing cold tones and lighter hues for the objects in the back. Mixing the right colors is something that comes to me intuitively now, as I have been painting for so long. And I think learning to mix colors is something that can be learned with practice. With colored inks, having only the colors cyan, magenta, yellow and black, and mixing them in different quantities allows you to mix almost any color you like. I would recommend starting from those four and seeing what kind of colors you can make. For learning to mix just the right colors, making master studies from other artists' works could be beneficial, especially choosing to study artworks which use very different palettes that you are used to in your own work. I also always have a scrap piece of paper where I test the color mixes that I make before using them in the painting. best way to have vibrant colors in your works is to do minimum mixing on your colors. Having clean tools like brushes and paint palette, and switching the water you are using regularly also helps. If you still feel like your colors are not vibrant enough, it might be due to the paint you are using. Some watercolors are not as saturated and don't have as high quality pigments in them, so the end result might end up looking flat. There are very good quality watercolors and inks available in affordable prices, but I would recommend only getting a few separate pans to see how you like a certain brand before buying an expensive set. Losing vibrancy when you photograph or scan your artworks might also be an issue, and while I scan my artworks, I might lose some of the vibrancy from the original as well. So I adjust the levels and the contrast in Photoshop to match the original painting. For very light and subtle tones, I use a lot of water. I also test every shade on a scrap piece of paper. Having too light tones is not really an issue, because with colored inks, you can always make them darker if you need to. So working slowly in layers of light colors is very handy if you want a subtle feel to your painting. It really depends a lot on the lighting of the piece and the character I am making. The colors that I use most often are magenta and yellow in bigger quantity, then a tiny bit of either green, blue, purple or black will always make the blend look better. I don't really know if I have a favorite color, since I try to go for a color palette that best suits the individual pictures I am making. But the ink I am running out of most often is cyan blue. Using the methods that I learned through color theory is something that comes naturally to me at this point, and I don't really have to think about it that much anymore. With each painting I am of course trying to make a harmonious color composition and to have a good contrast in light and dark. Sometimes I fail, and sometimes I succeed. Now that I look back on my previous works, I see that I subconsciously like the contrast of purple and yellow a lot, and tend to use that quite often in my artworks. I also noticed that I quite rarely leave white space in my works anymore. But that might be also why I'm really happy that I ended up making the background of this painting really light. One thing I do think quite often is that the way we see a color depends a lot on the context we see it in. This is something that most digital artists have to learn if they want to make prints of their digital artworks. Because the colors that are in your computer screen are made of lights, the colors that can be achieved are brighter and more saturated than what normal printers can print out in CMYK. That means that the really bright cyan or the neon green that you had displayed on your screen might and probably will not print looking as bright with pigments. Since I've worked with traditional mediums so long, I also know the limits that my tools have. But I've learned to lift up colors in my paintings by placing them next to dull and unsaturated tones. That way, I can make colors look more saturated than they are, or make colors that look too dark lighter by placing them next to darker tones and by changing the context they are presented in. I always mix the colors and very rarely use them straight from the pan. There are very rare occasions where I need the paints as saturated as I can get from the pan, because I use so much variety in value in my works. The watercolors that I use are also a bit flaky in their texture if taken straight from the pan, so I need to mix them some time with water to not have a grainy effect on the paper. I always have a scrap piece of paper next to my painting where I test the colors that I am mixing. That way I don't make a mistake by putting a wrong tone of color on my painting. It is also something that you learn by painting a lot. At this point, I can pretty accurately guess how a tone of colored ink or watercolor will look dry on the paper before I put it in the painting. With poster color and gouache, it is still a bit more difficult to me since those mediums will dry darker than what they looked wet, which is exactly opposite how colored inks and watercolors act. While painting with colored inks, I always know that if a tone is too light on the paper, I can always make it darker by adding a layer of color on top of it. This way, I am more careful not to lay too dark tones straight away, but to gradually build more contrast onto the painting with more and more layers of paint. When making a new painting, I usually decide all the colors that I will use after I have made the line art or after I have finished a detailed sketch. I might have a vague idea before that, but at this point I test the colors I think that will work with the piece I am making. The color of the shadows is very much linked to the lighting and the mood I am going for in that specific painting. If I have a nice calm setting with warm tones like orange and yellow and want the time of the day to be evening, I usually go for a toned down purple shadow. When making a piece with harsh daylight sunlight setting, I make the shadows darker, probably with a tint of blue. The colors that I choose for the shadows depend on the overall color scheme of the painting that I am making and the mood I am going for. This, I think, also comes down to trial and error when practicing mixing paints. If you feel like your colors are much too saturated overall in your works, try to use more water in your mixes to mix lighter colors, or introduce some dark ink to create a toned down version of the color you are looking for. Too saturated colors are also easier to fix in final paintings by, for example, making a really light wash of the contrasting color on top of the saturated tone. If you are looking for an artwork with only saturated colors, it is best for you to test your color combinations on a scrap piece of paper before laying them onto your painting. This way you can also see how two colors look side by side or laid on top of each other before committing to that choice in your final painting. Some artworks do look great with only bright saturated colors or pastel tones, but I also wouldn't shy away from nice, murky, grayish and brownish tones in your artworks. Those are as important and can lift up the bright tones in your work if you use the bright tones as an accent color beside them. One of the best things I remember learning early on was to never use colors straight from the tube or the pan. One of the most common things that I see beginners do is only using saturated primary colors straight from the pan on their works, and their paintings end up looking flat with no contrast in values between dark and light tones, and with too many saturated colors clashing with each other. To avoid muddy colors, I would also recommend replacing the water in your painting cup regularly. Yellow, especially lemon yellow, is one of those colors that will most likely need clear water to get a bright tone of. I think achieving harmony in colors comes with trial and error. I have noticed succeeding in creating harmonious color schemes by first testing my ideas for a color scheme digitally. If you are having a hard time making your colors work together, I would first recommend making a test with only grayscale for your painting. That way you can be certain that the values are working in your painting. There are of course some certain color palettes which I know that I can make work in my paintings, and I might use those more often than others. But I also find it important to go away from your comfort zone. In this piece, I wanted to try making a painting with mostly muted tones of gray. I rarely make paintings with color palettes like this, but I think it fits the mood very well. And I really enjoyed trying to make the foreground with warm tones of grey and to create depth with cold tones of blue tinted greys. In my works, I try to use accent colors sparingly, and I find that they work best in artworks where majority of the painting has either a very muted color palette or where big parts of the painting is composed of one color and the colors that are directly next to it in the color wheel. Then I usually end up picking an accent color from the opposite side of the color wheel and use it sparingly and in areas which I want to guide the viewer's focus on. In this painting I am making, there will be a lot of subtle and toned down colors, and at the end I will place more saturated accent colors in areas where I want the person viewing this painting to focus on. The painting is now finished, and here you can see the scanned final result. Thank you so much for attending my program. I hope you enjoyed this colored ink demo. Please also check out the other events taking place this weekend, and if you decided to draw along or will do so later on, you can use the Drawfest hashtag to see what other participants have been making. Have a great weekend, everyone!
If you're still drawing, please start wrapping up now. それでは皆さん、ここで桜タイムは終了となります。So please go ahead and upload your artwork to pixiv or Twitter with the hashtag Drawfest. Don't worry if it's just a sketch, anything is welcome. それではぜひ絵をハッシュタグドローフェスをつけて Twitter か pixiv に投稿してください。ラフ画でも大歓迎です。先ほどオーディオに問題があったことを お詫びします。この先はなるべくならないようにスタッフともども努めていきます。We apologize for the audio problems we were having earlier. We will be making sure that hopefully that won't happen again. Okay, so I see Heikala is drawing for us right now.
Yeah, I already started drawing something.
That was awesome. Please go ahead. So at this time, so Heikala will be drawing, and we're gonna start looking through artworks that have been posted on Twitter and pixiv, and start commenting on them. それではここからのロスタイムにて、ヘイカラさんが Twitter や pixiv から皆さんの作品を探してコメントなどをしてまいります。投稿している間に寄せられた質問などを答えていきたいと思います。So while we're waiting for everyone to upload their works, I think we'll start looking at questions that people are asking during the stream, and yeah, we'll start answering them. Okay, I'll start seeing. Can I just pick out a question?
Yeah, sure thing.
Okay, let's see. So, okay, one of the questions was, I have never done water-based paint before. Let's see, what sort of, oh wait, sorry, that was a different one. Oh, I see one. What size paper do you use most often?
I usually use either A4 or A3 size on that scale, I think.
On that scale? はい。今寄せられた質問は、紙のサイズはどのくらいを使うことが多いですかという質問に対して、A4、A3 サイズなどを使うことが多いとのことです。Okay. Let's see. Okay, next question. Is there a particular reason why you prefer inks over the traditional mediums?
Like in spite of like watercolors, I think. I think I like colored inks more just because once they are on the paper, they cannot be lifted, so it's easier for me to make layers on top of them, and they won't be moving from the paper when I lay a new layer of paint on top. I think that's one of the reasons why I like them so much.
Okay.
They are a bit harder to use that way when it comes to like watercolors, which are a bit easier, but it's just something I have now used to.
Okay. 今の質問は、他のアナログ媒体よりカラーインクを好む理由は何かあるんでしょうかという質問に対して、水彩は別としてカラーインクを好むのは、一度紙に置くともう動かない、水なので動かなくなるから、レイヤーを重ねていく、層を重ねて塗るのにとても便利だからです。これは場合によっては水彩よりだいぶ難しくもなりますが、私はもうこれに慣れたので、これが気に入っています。Okay. Let's see. Let me check for any other questions. Okay. You might have answered this in the video, but how much time do you invest in these kinds of pieces?
It really depends on the piece, but I think this one took me maybe from 8 to 10 hours. It's kind of hard for me to estimate it because it really takes a long time. A lot of the time is waiting for the paint to dry and thinking what to do next. But like active work, maybe from 4 to 5 hours, and passive work, there might be 3 hours of just watching the paint to dry.
I see. Okay, so let me say that in Japanese. 今の質問は、このような作品にはどれくらいの時間を使いますかという質問に対して、本当に作品によるんですが、この作品はだいたい8から10時間ほどかかったのでしょうかね。とても測るのが難しいんですよ。これは主に乾くのを待つ時間がとても長く、あと次にどういうふうに塗っていくかを考える時間も入ってくるので、おそらく実際に手を動かして塗っている時間というのは4から5時間ほどで、こういう考える時間や待ち時間が3時間ほどになるんじゃないでしょうかという答えでした。I love your girls, the drawings of the girls, the line arts.
Oh, thank you.
Wow. Ooh. Let's see. Oh, we might. Okay. Ooh.
I think we also have some questions in the messages that I linked.
Yes, I'll pick up some of those. The ones you're writing down. Oh, sorry, just a moment.
Yes.
Let's see. So you did have a question. Okay. Okay, here's a question. Are you constantly wetting the paper as you paint throughout the trees in the backgrounds, or was the initial pass of water all you needed?
Oh, yes. In the painting that I made, the scorched painting, in the video, the first pass of water was not nearly enough to last all the while. So I usually, when I work wet on wet, I wet the paper multiple times over the course of the painting process. But with colored inks, that is possible to paint over maybe the whole paper, wet it as many times as I want.
I'm sorry, the last portion you said for the color inks, you can go over as many times as you want with the water. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So basically, whenever I made one pass, one area, and when it dried, I usually just wet the paper again, so I can achieve that wet on wet look.
Okay. 今の質問は、少々お待ちください。Okay. このような絵を描くときは何度も水を張るんでしょうか？それとも最初の1回目の水を張る分だけで十分なのでしょうか？という質問に対してです。答えというのが、はい、今回の特にこの動画で流れた絵に関しては、1回目の水だけでは全く足りずに、ウェットオンドウェット、その濡れたウェットオンドウェットタイプの水彩画をやるときには必ず何度も水を張り直しています。カラーインクを使う際には、この水を足すことで、その水の滲んだウェットオンドウェット系の絵を作るの味を出すためには、そういうやり方がとてもよく使います。という答えです。I think, let's see. Okay, here's another. I think I'll look for. Oh, you had another question you were interested in. Let's see. Okay, here's one. You seem to be inspired by nature in your works. Are there woods or forests near you or someplace you visit for inspiration?
do you want to say it in Japanese also now?
You know what? I think I'll do that. Okay, just a moment. まず最初に今の質問を日本語で言わせていただきます。よく作品で自然をモチーフに使われていますが、インスピレーション、着想を得るために森や特定の場所によく行ったりするんでしょうかという質問です。Okay, please go ahead.
Since I've always lived my whole life in Finland, we have ever since I was little, I have had forests growing right next door. So being among nature is something that I have always had the chance to do. I also really like gardening and picking mushrooms and picking berries. So whenever I am on my free time, I usually go to the nature, and I think that's really inspires me and some of my artworks.
I see. Nature. Okay. 私はもう生まれた時からフィンランドに住んでいますので、小さい頃からもうとにかく森など自然がとても身近にありまして、常に自然に囲まれていたという感じです。ガーデニングなどの趣味もとても好きで、よくマッシュルーム、キノコや木の実などを摘みに行ったりもします。とにかく自由時間があれば自然と触れ合っているので、それがかなり私の作品に影響を出していると思います。Okay. Mushroom love, yes indeed. Sorry, I saw a comment. Sorry, I had to. Okay. Shall we go on with questions? Or maybe I wonder if they're starting to find, or if they're starting to upload works by now.
I can check. Can I check my Twitter?
Yes, please do. Yes.
Let's see. Oh yeah.
There we go.
There are some coming up. Yeah. Oh, this is so nice. Oh, that lighting in this first one is really nice.
これのもう
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. この作品はもう光の使い方が素晴らしいですね。Please go ahead.
Ooh, this one is darker, but I really like it.
これはとても暗い雰囲気でもとても好きです。Please go ahead.
Yeah, these are so nice. I'm really surprised that so many of you have had the time to, in 1 hour, make something this elaborate. Oh, this is cool.
これほど細かくしっかりとできたものをこのたったの1時間でできたというのは本当に私今驚いています。Okay, thank you.
Oh, this is really pretty.
これもとても綺麗ですね。
I'm wondering if I should have gone with a palette like this, a bit more color.
私もこのような配色でいけばよかったかなと思いました。
I'm also gonna check the pixiv tag if there's some post over there.
Okay. 今からpixivのタグもちょっと調べますね。Oh, there we go.
Oh, I think I saw the stream of this one.
これの配信をちょっと見たかもしれません。
Oh, I really like these flickers of flames here.
この火花が火の跡がチカチカとまだ燃え残っているのがとても素敵だと思います。
I had some flickers of flames in the early sketch, but I somehow I think maybe I forgot to add them in at the end, or I thought maybe not to have them, but they look really nice in this one.
私も当初のスケッチでは少し残り火みたいのをチカチカと書いてあったんですが、最終的には入れません でしたけど、これ本当に、この今のは本当に素敵だと思いました。Thank you.
I'm really surprised that there are so many.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, me too. 本当にこんなにできてるのが、私、とても驚きです。And if we're getting more. Wow, yeah, so many.
Oh, this one is nice also, with a slightly blue hue in it.
これもいいですね。青を使っているのが本当に素敵です。
So many.
Yeah.
I think there will be even more after the event is over.
Yeah. きっとイベントの後もどんどん増えるんでしょうね。
Yeah, I need to go check them all out.
Yeah. もうぜひ全部見ていきたいです。
Would you like me to answer some more questions or?
Yeah, I think I'll start looking at a few more. Ooh, please. We have something about, one of our staff members has advised us on a post made on Twitter 27 minutes ago. So maybe we'll take a look at that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. I'm scrolling down too. It's quite a ways down. Let's see. Oh wait, I passed it. 27. Ooh, it's the one with the glowing. It's by a user Tired Clean.
Oh,
Yes.
wow, this one. Wow. That is so pretty. Wow.
いや、とても綺麗ですね、これは。
I'm so surprised that they managed to do this in so little time. I actually want to see this maybe finished. This is really nice.
いや、この短時間でこれができたのは本当に驚きです。ぜひ完成品が見たいですね。Session 3 couldn't finish this on time. Oh, okay. Oh, he has class. Oh.
They had to go to class, yeah.
Yes. どうやら学校があったようで中断したようですね。
Oh, this is also nice. It has a really different mood to mine when it has like, this is what is happening long after my painting when there's already water pouring down and it has engulfed the flames.
Yes. これは私の絵とはだいぶ雰囲気が違いますね。イメージ的には、私の絵のもう随分時間が経った後に、雨がもう完全に火を消し去った後という感じと思いますね。Okay, thank you. That's cute. Yes. Okay.
Yes, please do post them on Twitter. If you are going to make something over this weekend, I would very much like to see them.
この週末の間に完成させてくれるというのなら、もうぜひどんどん書き続けてアップロード、ツイッターなどに投稿してください。私はもう全部見て回りたいです。Okay. Okay, maybe I think they're flooding in right now. Take a look at us.
Ooh,
that's nice.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow, it's pretty.
綺麗ですね。
Oh, these are like ghost deer and a ghost spirit.
これは幽霊の鹿と少女の幽霊という感じですね。
Oh, this has more of like a painterly style look to it. I really like the colors.
この配色本当にいいですね。どちらかというともう本当に芸術家、ペインターの絵の具の感じがします。
So many.
Yeah, so many. Maybe we'll start. Maybe I'll take a look at some of the questions again now.
Yeah, sure thing. If we have some time.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think with all these paintings coming up, we can spend the rest of the time just looking at these. Let's see. I see the comments are doing the translation for me.
That's nice. Thank you.
Yes, very helpful.
Oh, this is really nice. If there are some questions, I can also continue sketching a bit, and we can watch some of those later. Or
yeah, how about
also?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna sorry. I was just gonna say, yeah, you can continue with your sketches, and I'll read some more questions. I think we still have a few. Okay, I'll read this in English, then in Japanese.
Sure thing.
Okay, so we have a question. How do you make sure you don't get watermarks when you layer water? I sometimes get weird cauliflower watermarks. 日本語で今の質問を言いますと、水の層を置くときに跡が残らないようにするコツはありますか？変なカリフラワーみたいな跡が残るんですと。Okay.
I think it's what the person is asking, how not to get like when you paint one area, how not to get like how to get the area to be like really flat looking and not have paint on the edges to pile up. I think that comes down to maybe the amount of water or paint you are using, and also maybe with the paper quality you have. Some paper qualities don't absorb the water so well, so if the paint sits on the paper surface too long, it might make weird surface patterns. So I would recommend maybe using cold pressed watercolor paper.
Cold press, okay. はい、今の質問への答えは、少々お待ちください。おそらくその水の跡が残るというのは、水がではなく水彩の絵の具がきれいに広まってくれ広まってくれずに縁などの方に絵の具や水が溜まってしまうという質問かと思います。その問題はおそらく水や絵の具の量が関係すると思いますね。そこを調整することで直せると思います。あるいは紙の質も関わってきますね。あまり良くない紙の画用紙ですと、水を置きすぎるとシミができてしまうので、コールドプレス水彩画用紙を使うことをお勧めします。Okay, I think that should do it. Okay, let me look at a few more questions. Let's see. Okay, here's a question. I learned that in watercolors, you should paint the lightest color first and the darkest color last. Is there a reason to paint the darkest color first? Let me just read that in Japanese.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. 今の質問は、水彩画ではなるべく明るい色から塗っていき、濃い色は最後と学んだのですが、黒っぽい色から先に塗る場合というのはあるんでしょうか？ Okay, thank you very much.
When I'm painting with colored inks, the order that I'm painting in doesn't necessarily matter. With watercolors, you do have to start from light colors and move on to the dark ones, because if you do the dark ones first, it'll bleed into the lighter areas then.
Okay.
If you paint on top.
今の質問に対する答えですが、カラーインクなどを使うときは、この問題、特にこの順番は関係ありません。水彩を使う場合ですと、確かに明るい色から暗い色に進まなければいけません。暗い色を先に乗せてしまうと、明るい色に滲んでしまうから、これを避ける必要があるんですね。はい、以上です。Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just had a word from the staff that we have, because you're the last streamer for today, this is the last stream for today, you have pretty much all the extra time you want. So I think we'll just keep on checking the whatever has been uploaded and keep answering questions. As long as we can stay awake, I guess.
Okay. I woke up at 2 a.m. already to check out the first programs that were happening. Yeah, so I'm a bit tired, but I think I can go on until 10 a.m. So 20 more minutes. Let's call it a day then, so I can go sleep.
Okay, yeah, definitely. ヘイカラさんで今日のプログラムは本日のプログラムは終了となりますので、今のところロスタイムはまだ残っているんですが、ヘイカラさんもこれまでのプログラムに参加していたので、フィンランド時間ですと朝の2時から起きているという状態なので、あと20分ほどで締めて、眠りたいということになっていますので、だいたいそんな感じで進めていこうと思います。Okay, thank you very much. Okay. So maybe I'll take a look at a few more questions.
Sure thing.
Okay. Okay, here's a good one. Who are the artists that have influenced you? Is there a style or art style you would like to try or adopt in your drawings? 影響を受けたアーティストなどはいますか？試してみたい、取り入れてみたい画風などとかもありますでしょうか？ Okay, thank you very much.
I think over the time there have been so many artists that have inspired me, and like the biggest thing that inspires me right now are the works of other artists. So it's really hard to say just one or two. When I started doing art for the first time, some shows, like animation shows, really inspired me. I remember watching Pokemon a lot when I was younger, and also Moomin. Do you know Moomin?
Yes, definitely. It's popular in Japan too.
Yeah, those really inspire, and really the works of Tove Jansson, the creator of Moomins, her works really inspire me still very much. So I'll say that.
Okay. Okay. それでは今の質問に対する答えですが、本当にもうたくさんもうこれまでにいろんなアーティストに影響を受けてきました。なので今も常に他のアーティストに影響を受けているので、1人や2人に絞るというのはちょっと難しいですね。でも自分が絵を描き始めた頃を考えてみると、よくアニメなどを見て影響を受けてましたね。例えばポケモンなどを見ていました。あれに影響を受けましたね。他にもムーミンにとても影響を受けました。とても好きでした。なので今でもムーミンの作者様の作品にはとても影響を受けています。
I think the other question was really good too. I didn't have the chance to answer it about
which one?
How was it? It was about my style.
Oh, yes. Style.
Can you say it again? It was part of the last question.
Oh, the second half. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, whoops. I scrolled away. Give me just a second.
No
Oh, yeah.
worries.
Okay, here it is. The second half of the question was, is there a style or an art style you would like to try or adopt?
Oh, yeah. I think when it comes to like art style, I think my art style is always evolving to something new, and I really like that it's doing that. I don't like being still, but one thing I would like to maybe do in the future, like when I do freehand sketches like this, without sketching with pencil underneath, I find that my line art is sometimes much more lively. So that is something I wish I could also interpret or include in my paintings as well.
Okay. 今のは先ほどの質問の後半、試してみたい画風や取り入れてみたい画風などありますかという質問に対して、私の画風は常に進化していると思っています。常に新しく、とにかくじっとしていないというふうに考えています。でも、あえて言うなら、今私がスケッチしているように、下書きに鉛筆などを使わずに直接ペンで描くときに、もっとこの絵に命が入っている、もっと生き生きしていると感じるので、これを完成品の絵にどうにか取り入れてみたいと思いますね。という答えでした。Okay, thank you very much. Okay, maybe I'll take a look at a few more questions. Okay, here is one. Do you usually practice sketching or drawing with only line drawings? I was curious because you were drawing beautifully in one shot. 普段から線画だけのスケッチやドローイングといった練習はされているのでしょうか？一発書きで綺麗に描いていたのを見たので気になっていました。Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's actually like a really nice question because the answer is when I'm sketching, I usually I'm sketching like this. So not using a pencil. I don't really like erasing my sketches. I find that it somehow stops the creative process in my head if I use a pencil. If I make a mistake while I'm making sketches with pens, I usually just move on to like next to it and start again or start something completely new. So I usually don't end up spending too much time on one sketch, and that way also I have time to create much more interesting ideas than by just concentrating on one sketch. I'm sorry, it was such a long answer.
No problem. Can I just ask that about the last section? You said you don't spend too much time on one sketch, so
yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah. What was it? So you said that it's more creative. You feel like it's a more creative process. Is that what's the last part of that last answer you're saying?
I think it's more like when I'm trying to think of ideas for paintings that I want to make. I think it's better if I work with a pen. I can create a lot more ideas faster.
A lot more. Okay. More. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No worries.
Okay. Oh, okay. Let me say that. 今の質問に対する答えですが、このようなスケッチやドローイングといった練習は、そうですね、私はあまり鉛筆でのスケッチはあまり嫌いなのでしません。主に消しゴムをかけるのが嫌いなんです。なぜなら、このクリエイティブな考えを消してしまうと、消しゴムを使って消すと、その創造性を止めてしまうという気がするからです。ペンでスケッチをしているときは、もう失敗をしてしまったら、もう完全にやり直すか、あるいは全く新しいものに着手し始めるので、一つのスケッチにもうあまり時間をかけないようにしてくれるのです。この方がいろんなアイディアを出していって、いろんなアイディアを作り上げていくことができると思うんです。
I would also, yeah, I would also very much recommend freehand sketching to other artists who are starting out, or especially if they are trying to learn anatomy when creating. Is it croquis? Croquis, like really fast sketches of people in their poses. When making those with tools that you can't erase, you learn a lot faster because you don't have time to correct your mistakes. You just try again, and you get better a lot faster than when you would use your time to perfect each and every sketch. That is what I meant.
I see. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. このようにフリーハンドでもうペンなどを使って何度もスケッチをするというのは初心者などにもとてもおすすめです。特に人体の勉強、クロッキーと言いましたか？何度も素早く人体を描く練習などにはとてもおすすめなんです。なぜなら消せるようなツールを使うと、何度も一つのスケッチをやり直したり、もうそれを完璧に仕上げようとしてしまうという状態に陥ってしまうので、それよりは新しいものをとにかく何度もチャレンジしていくという、そういうプロセスの方がよっぽど身についていく、こういう覚えていく人体などの構造を覚えるのにとても役に立つと思うんです。とにかく何度も回数を重ねるということが大事だと思います。以上です。OK. Give me just a second. Let me take a drink. Okay. What is croquis are basically really quick drawings, sketches of. Sorry, I just saw someone asking that in the comments. Yeah, it's basically quick sketches of what do you call it when you're sketching something live in front of you? Is it live sketching?
Live drawing. I think it's drawing from life or live drawing.
Okay, live drawing. So yeah, it's basically quick sketch of a figure. Correct. Thank you. 今のはクロッキーの説明を聞いていた方がいたので、短時間で目の前の生物が何か目の前のものをスケッチするという練習法のことだと説明させてもらいました。以上です。Okay. Let's see.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, that one was already answered. Here's a question about painting. I'm not good at putting bold, dark colors on my picture. I'm afraid of making mistakes, especially in analog, so I don't have much courage and end up with pale tones. If you have any advice, I'd be happy to hear it. Okay, let me just say that in Japanese. 今の質問は、絵に思い切った暗い色をのせるのが苦手です。特にアナログは失敗が怖くてなかなか勇気が出ず、淡いトーンになってしまうのです。よろしければアドバイスいただけると嬉しいです。Thank you very much.
Yeah, so if you're having a hard time having enough contrast in your works, when doing traditional mediums, what I nowadays do is I make either a color thumbnail on a scrap piece of paper where I try the colors and especially the tones that I will use, like the darks and lights, and see how they use. And if you have the possibility to try them digitally, I would recommend it. Sometimes I even, on the midway when painting a piece, I think maybe I should do an area that is darker, but I am afraid to do so. So I take a picture of the painting I am making and do that edit digitally, so I don't ruin the painting I am making.
Okay, let me answer that in the Japanese. 今の質問に対する答えですが、こういうアナログ絵の具などでコントラストを出す際に困っている場合は、私はサムネイルサイズの絵をカラーで描くことをお勧めします。小さめな絵を別の使わない紙などに小さく描いて色を試すことです。そこでその暗い色などがうまくいくかをチェックします。もう一つ最近使っている方法はデジタルを利用することです。最近は絵の途中でも暗い色を使うかなと迷ったときにそのまま暗い色を使わずにテストとして絵のその状態をデジタルで写真を撮って、でコンピューターなどに取り込んで、そこで暗い色を試してみたりします。これは確かに暗い色は後戻りが効かないので怖いのは同じなので、この方法はとてもおすすめです。はい、以上になります。Okay, I think okay, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. なるほどです。Is there something, this is just my question, is there something inspiring your drawings right now too?
I do have some pictures saved up in my phone for like pose references and stuff, but some of them, like this one, are just from imagination.
Imagination.
So it really depends. Sometimes I draw from reference, like photo reference, and sometimes I just draw, well, whatever I feel like.
Okay. Oh, actually, I think we're almost out of time. Let me just say that quickly in Japanese. 今のスケッチにも何かインスピレーションがあるのでしょうかと聞いたところに、これはほぼ自分の想像から出しているだけです。時々写真などレファレンスに参考に使うこともありますが、これはこの魔女のとか猫ちゃんはほぼ想像から描いているとのことです。Okay, thank you very much. So cute.
There you go. I think we should wrap things up now.
Yeah, I think we should. I think
it's been really nice, though. Really, really nice, and I'm so happy that so many people came. And I'm just gonna, after this, after I have rested a bit, I'm just gonna go to Twitter and pixiv and check out all the artworks that you guys made.
いや、本当に皆さん参加いただきもうありがとうございます。たくさん人が来て、もう本当に嬉しかったです。これからも一眠りしてからツイッターなどを見て皆さんの作品をもうじっくり見ていきたいと思います。本当にありがとうございました。Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure translating for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was so nice. I'm sorry there was so much for you to translate.
Oh, no,
at
there's
times.
no problem at all.